Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Platform Fundamentals Academy. We are thrilled to kick off this year's session right at the top of the hour. I'm Patty Montesinos, your Platform Outbound Product Manager and today's host. We have an incredible session lined up, and I can't wait for us to dive in. But before we get started, let me share a few quick logistics with you. A couple housekeeping items. These presentations are crafted with you in mind. So our goal is to inspire you with fresh ideas, practical use cases that will elevate your understanding of our platform tools. Don't worry if you missed something. The session is being recorded and will be available in our community on the Platform Fundamentals Academy forum. Feel free to fire away with your questions throughout the presentation. Just remember to post them in the QA section of the Zoom so our amazing panelists can address them. And if we run out of time, we will do our best to make sure that we answer them offline and post them within the community so that your voices are being heard. A quick reminder to practice safe harbor. We might share some exciting new features today, so let's just keep everything compliant with those best practices. And now for the good stuff, I'm thrilled to introduce our fantastic speaker, Adam Stout, who will take us on this journey of unlocking the power of the Sys audit for effective system auditing. In common use cases, he'll go through as well as demo and go through basic setup and so much more. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Adam. Take it away.
I feel like I needed some recorded applause. I think we need to get that for next time. Okay, thanks, Patty. So we're going to go ahead and get into our topic today. So we're talking about unlocking the power of Sys Audit. And we're going to about what we can do with auditing. How do we configure that? How do we know what's going on? Basic outline for today is first we're going to start out with story time, one of my favorite parts of the session. And then we're going to go into basic setup for audit, what's important to know about how to use it, how to read it. We're going to get to some advanced setup to go through. There really is even more advanced things that we want to do, but in the time we have today, we're going to talk about how do you use it, what's there, and then how do you configure it. Then we'll get a little bit at the end about analytics, some of the analytics that runs with Sys Audit, and then we hopefully will have some time for Q&A. Let's not wait till the end. So if you have questions as we're going, please put those in the Q&A so that we can answer them as we're going. We'll take a couple breaks in between the sections, but try to refrain from the questions in the chat because we miss those some of the times. And if you put them in the Q&A, it'll ensure that we can get an answer to you. All right, so we're going to start with story time. And as part of story time, we have a poll. Patty, if you can launch the first poll we have. And this is a story time. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. But at some point in time, Lucy was working. She was working late on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, working on getting some paperwork done, documenting some of the things that happened that week. While she was updating this important record that had been live for a few months, somehow, since it was a little bit late in the week, late in the evening, she pressed delete. And I think she pressed delete twice. So deleted the record and really lost months of notes. What I want to know is, have any of you ever been Lucy before? Has this happened to you? You're working on a record, I'm working on a change or an HR case or something, and I press delete. So in Lucy's story, she lost the record, she lost months of notes. But did she? Let's talk about what happened after that. And we have the answer there. So a lot of us have run into this. I have been Lucy myself. In this story, I'm not Lucy. So what happened? Well, Lucy called her superhero, sysadmin, and sysadmin did come to save the day. So what we were able to do was get into the audit, into the system audit, go to deleted records, and restore the record in a few minutes. After asking for help, she was able to get that record back and recover that week's worth of work, months worth of notes that were going back. What she did was create an incident and said, hey, can you restore this record? And the sysadmin was able to go into deleted records and quickly find that record, restore it, and Lucy was up and running very, very quickly, didn't lose a beat. It wasn't going back to a snapshot before. She didn't have to call ServiceNow support. The system admin who had access to Sys Audit was able to come in, just press restore, and then Lucy was back and running. Great use for Sys Audit. It is what inspired this entire session, was going through this and how great it was and how not everybody knows that exists. And as a side note, Lucy did live happily ever after. She had a much more relaxing weekend when she saw that record that was restored. And the second poll, we have you ever used Sys Audit for something like this as well, where you had to revert back to change a field, see what it was before and change it back, or just restore a deleted record? Has that ever come to save your day? Well, many of you, as I'm seeing these come in, are luckier than I have, because I have definitely had to do this, and I hope that none of you have, but we're here today and we're going to talk about how do you do it if it needs to happen. And if you can help us out with some other use cases you've had, we'd love to hear about those, how Sys Audit has helped you in the past. Okay, we'll leave that open for a minute as we go through. Again, we have a lot of lucky people who have not had to do this, but I guess we should have asked, did you know you could do it? Did you need to do it and not do it? Or have you just been lucky enough not to have to do it? So the basics of Sys Audit. Sys Audit is available on records that we have auditing enabled on. Out of the box, a lot of our task records generally have auditing enabled. We'll talk a little bit later in the configuration on how you can review that and how you can check it. But when I have auditing enabled, I can come in and click on the history for a record. So if you have audit enabled, in the context menu, we'll see history, and that's going to show me the changes that have happened since auditing's been enabled. If I go to a table that does not have auditing enabled and I enable it, it'll be my changes going forward, but it didn't record what's going on. So auditing is just saying record all the changes to the table as well as deletes. What this looks like on it, I'm looking at an incident here, and I right click on the header and I can see history. And then I have two views, the calendar view and the list view. In the calendar view, I'm going to see a calendar. I have a few options if I want to see the week all the way up to the year, and I'm going to see every change that comes through and who made it. Really, really useful if you're trying to track down when did this become a P1 or not. You can it's going to show you all the fields by default that you have access to. ACLs are still honored. So if you don't have access to see a field, then you won't see the audit for that field as well. But if I have access to see the field, I'll see the audit, and access to see the audit, I'll see those. And there's a little box at the top to highlight a certain change. So if I'm looking specifically for state changes or priority changes or assignment changes, I will see that there. The other view, in addition to calendar view, is the list view. This is the view I use the most to come through, share those results of the poll. And so again, I have history, and then I have list view, and the list view, instead of showing me a calendar view, it's going to show me just every field change that has happened to come through. I use this one the most because I can go in and look for a specific field. In the calendar view, especially if I have a record that's been open for a long time, there's lots of things, and I can see that Beth changed it, and Patty changed it, and Adam changed it. But then I have to kind of go see what's going on, or I can read the full log. In this case, this is very much a use case that I will use often. I can go into the history. I see all the field changes, but I can go in and search for just the state changes. So here I'm actually going to see every state change that happened and who changed it. Again, really, really useful if I need to find out why something is the way it is and look at it. And that's there, both views, the calendar view and the list view, depending on your use case and what you're looking for. CMDB tables have something special about them. So CMDB have a timeline view. So we have that calendar and the list that's available for everything that has audit enabled. But if I'm looking at a CMDB table, which is very sensitive, when did this computer get reassigned? When did it get upgraded? What happened? I can look at the timeline view. In addition to calendar and list, I still have those for CMDB, but the timeline view lets me really very easily with a slider see how this record has changed over time. We know CIs, the configuration items, my computers, my whatever it is, have changed. We can look at that. Really, it was intended and built for things looking at when did my server change, when did my computer change. But as we embrace CSDM, when my business services and all my things, whether they're physical things or logical things, are in CMDB, this timeline view is going to work as well. Again, really, really useful to look at those things. One of the things I want to call out as we talk about CMDB and how CMDB is extended. When you have auditing enabled, it is enabled on the table, but it does not cascade down. So if I add new classes, I probably want to go look and see if my auditing has been added onto the new classes that come through. I actually don't know the default for CMDB if it's special, but by default for new tables are not audited. And if you extend a table, it's also not audited. You need to go in and turn the audit on for each of those tables that come through. Really great view if you have CMDB or when you're looking at CMDB in addition to that calendar and list. Next, the secret weapon in our story today was deleted records. So if I come in if I do need to restore a record and I have auditing enabled, for most tables, if you have auditing enabled, we are auditing deletes as well. It's not a separate flag. There are some tables where deletes are not audited. Generally, Sys tables, it's in the documentation about what is and what is not. But if I turn on auditing on a new table, data lead record is going to be there. I can come in and I can search by the display value of what's going on, and I can quickly restore it. So in this case, I went to deleted records under system definition. I searched for all the deleted incidents. I can search by the display value. And then I will get this gobbledygunk of XML, but I can quickly click on undelete with related, and it's going to restore that record. It's like I never lost. Again, it's not coming from a backup from 2 days ago or a backup from last night. It is when I deleted it, it happened. I'll also call out, it does store, I filtered it out here, but it has who deleted it, and it has when the record was deleted. Really key information, right? So I'm not looking necessarily to restore something from 6 years ago, but I want to look for that thing that that person just deleted 2 hours ago. And I know who deleted it. Lets me find that very quickly. In this case, the display value is pretty clear. I deleted it, incident 5, so I can go pull up incident 5. But knowing that Adam was the one who screwed it up, I can search for records deleted by Adam today, and I'll find that pretty quickly.
Hey Adam, we have a question related to the update time. Is Greta, one of our attendees says that they feel like it's never correct displaying the correct time, and whether that's a bug or is that something that they would be able to make a change on?
The updated time, I think that we're talking like here when we see the updated by here, or the
Yes.
updated by here. That should be correct, and it should be displayed as your time, just like all the times in the system. So if I deleted it at 11 p.m., but one of my and I'm based on the west coast of the US, if one of my colleagues in Europe was looking for it, they would see it had been deleted the next day, right? But that should be correct. Um, I I don't know why it would be wrong. If I knew it was wrong, I would put a case in to go take a look at what's going on there. There are, and I guess I don't, well, I do want to highlight as we look at this, and I said I have a separate slide for it. But one of the things you will notice up at the top of this, let's see if I can move my mouse. Hopefully, we're seeing my mouse here. The updated count. So this has an updated count of 35, but the audited is only 14. It's a little weird. But what that is telling me is that there were 21 other changes that were not audited. So um, that can come from the fields before, because I didn't have auditing turned on at the time. I believe it would come if you've purged out your old history, it wouldn't know what those audits were. And so with the audited changes would actually drop out if you were deleting from the audit from 2 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever your case may be. And it would also happen if you used a workflow and you turned workflows off. And I don't have it in here, but we can get some more details if you want. In scripting, you have the option of turning workflows off, which turns off auditing. Set workflow is false does set auditing off or turn off auditing off as well. And the other field is Sys Auto Update, turning that off. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that would cause the dates to be not what you think they would be. Now, in this case, seeing Joe or Beth editing it, that I expect to be correct. But I could have a script that turns set workflows false, turns off workflows, turns off auditing, but does not turn off Sys Auto fields. somebody in the panel wants to correct it, make sure I get that right, that method right. If I turn sys auto fields and I leave that on, but turn auditing off, I would have an updated time that would be different than what my audit would say, because my audit would have the change before that, 2 changes before that. And the same thing could happen if I turn audit. It'd be weird if I turned auditing off, but turned sys, left auditing on, but turned sys auto fields off. That would also be a little weird. I don't think I've done that. I normally turn them both off if I'm doing something like that. And I would, there's totally valid use cases for that, which would be something like a fixed script where we're just changing something. And I don't want to register it as an audit. So you have to be very thoughtful if you're doing something like that, because then if somebody goes and looks at the audit, it would not make sense. And so you have to be really clear if that's something we want to do or not, because it would be different, but there'd be no audit of it changing. Like here, we see the impact going from medium to high. If I ran a script and turned auditing off, it just would be high, but there'd be no changes for it. I've seen that happen. It is weird. So in my younger days, I turned auditing off way more than I probably should have, because I didn't want to cause noise. But realistically, for an audit like this, for most things, I try not to turn the audit off unless there's a major performance issue and we're fixing a misspelling or something like that, or we're changing. This is showing me the display values for impact priority, urgency. If I was unifying my urgency values, and so I was not materially changing it, I was just changing something in the background. So instead of urgency value being 3, it's now going to be U. I'd probably turn auditing off for that, because it's not meaningful. But anything meaningful, I'd want to leave auditing on, so that when somebody goes and looks at it, it's consistent. But if you see it, and we'll go back. If you see auditing, it's just the data is wrong for you, put a case in. Okay, so we looked at the timeline, we looked at CMDB, deleted records. And again, deleted records, very, very easy to restore something if you have auditing on. All right,
Is
yep.
this for only one record at a time, or can this be done for multiple records?
That is a good question. We'll pull that up if we have time at the end. I do it one at a time. I would think you could be able to list select, but I do not know off the top of my head if the UI action allows you to list select the records. I think it does, but we'll check it out. If we can bulk restore. And if we were going to bulk restore, we would do a list view from here. We're going to talk a little bit more about other things you could do as well towards the end. But we'll come back and pull that up on an instance live, and we can see it. Okay, so we're started. Let's talk about some advanced setup and some things to happen. The first thing is configuring it. It's not super advanced, but it's there. Auditing this is in the documentation. I have the page here, and if you search for enable auditing, you'll find this pretty clearly. The documentation hasn't changed for a long time, even though I hope it would. Auditing is not set on the table record on SysDB object. It's not set there. It is set in the dictionary on the collection field. So every table has 2 entries. It has the table record in SysDB object, and it has the collection record in SysDictionary. So I went to the dictionary, and we searched for dictionary. Each table, in this case, I have a table called business unit. We have our normal types for all of our fields in there. I have my string fields, my reference fields, my choice fields. There is also a record with the type of collection. The type of collection, that is the table. And on that record, we can come in and check audit. That is how you can turn this on. By default, new tables don't audit. So one of the most important things that I do when I create a new app is go, should I turn auditing on? The auditing does not need to be on it. Everything's transactional stuff that's processing. I probably don't need that, or it's a log table. There's no point because it's never updated. But anytime I'm doing something on task, I'm going to turn audit on. If it's not updated very much, it's not going to add a lot to the audit. Great. There's not a lot of things happening. But it really, really, really comes in handy. In the story from before, it was a custom table that we had turned auditing on. And both for being able to see those field changes and who reassigned it and when did this status get changed, because it wasn't expected. That's really useful. And then deleted records can save the day, but make sure you go back into the dictionary and alter this. I was just looking at ServiceNow Studio, and I didn't see how to do it in ServiceNow Studio. That probably is a way, but I didn't see it because it's not, again, on that table record that you can edit. So I still had to go back to dictionary and do this. And the reason I'm spending a lot of time talking about this is so that you know I got to go change the attribute on the collection. We're changing on the there's a little bit more tuning you can do. Generally, for me, I'm just turning it on the table or not. We'll talk about some more advanced features in a second, but I'm going to turn it on the table and audit everything by checking that one box, including the deleted records. Now, next thing I want to talk about is who can see the audit. So some of us on this call, I'm sure, have never seen this stuff before. Maybe you saw it in sysadmin class, but it's never been on your instance. It's controlled by a system property and roles. So one of the things I might do is create a can view role or a view history role that I can kind of give out freely. Out of the box, the two roles that can see the Sys Audit, that can see history, are admin. Don't give admin people to see history. Don't do that. Admin, you only have a couple admins on each of our instances in production, right? That should be very protected. This should not be the reason you give admin. The next is ITIL. This has just been around for a long time. So a lot of our ITSM users who have ITIL have history and they use it. And then a lot of other people don't. If I'm using HR and I may not see that history of the HR case. So you definitely want to go look at the glide history role and add in appropriate roles. Again, my suggestion is to create a role that's can view history, something that's all it does. And then I can grant that as liberally as I want to. And I can give it to my HR team to view, and I can give it to whomever I want. Again, if you can't see the data, this is not a backdoor to see things that have come in. We're not looking at the database dump to come through. But to view history, I can as long as I can see, as long as I have access to view the field on the record today, I can view what it was. So again, you have to think about what you want to have. Definitely test it for your users and making sure you're not giving, I don't want to give all my requesters access to that stuff because it just opens up too many more questions. But for my fulfillers, the people who are doing the work, my managers who need to understand what happened when there's a question that comes up, I want to figure out how to get them access. I don't want to give them admin, and I don't want to give them ITIL unless there was some other reason. So I can create a custom role, and then I can modify that here to give them access to that.
We have two questions, people who raised their hand. Roxanne, you should be able to ask.
We'll go on, and if you have a question, you can put it into the Q&A, or we'll go through. There are a couple other questions. Let's see if I get there. We're going to go through a couple more, and then this is going to answer some of the questions, and then I'll take a break to answer the questions in the Q&A. There are a few tables that are involved. So that role is about viewing history, not viewing Sys Audit. Sysadmin is what you need to do to view Sys Audit, and also the Sys Audit delete, those deleted records. That should be admin, not ITIL to come in. There's a few tables that are involved. Sys Audit is the main one. That's the one I'm going to look at, Sys Audit delete. But we also have the Sys history, which is where we have history sets and history lines. The real answer for this is what drives history. History is driven by history, and it pulls it from Sys Audit. So what happens is it gets cached. We query Sys Audit, flatten it out so you can see those Sys history lines, and then it's fast to view the history and the calendar and the list and all that stuff. Important here, it's in red. Don't touch those. The Sys history is there, and it kind of looks what you want, but it's incomplete. It gets purged because it's just much more of a caching mechanism than anything else. The main table that we're looking with, or we're dealing with, is Sys Audit. That's where all the historical information is in. Journals are actually in Sys journal fields. Since journal fields cannot be updated, we don't need to actually audit them because they're just logged. All the other stuff is going to go into Sys Audit. Sys Audit delete is when you delete something, it throws it into Sys Audit delete. When I went to deleted records, that is Sys Audit delete. That's how you restore it. And then Sys Audit relation, when you delete a record, it still has other stuff. The related records, those are stored in Sys Audit relation. So they're important. You can look at them. I actually never look at Sys Audit relation. Sys Audit is what's being used for history, and occasionally I will look at it directly. Be warned, it can be very big. And then Sys Audit delete. I hope you never have to see it. It was the key to making Lucy's weekend happier. So it's very good to know that it's there, and it's not in Sys Audit. So you do have to know that that exists when you need to pull that trigger. Question that came in is how long are audit histories kept? As long as you want to keep them. I will warn you that Sys Audit is often one of the largest tables on your instance. But you can set up a table cleaner and purge out that data. And Sys Audit Delete, it's capturing that whole data, so it can get to be quite large as well. And so we want to have a policy in place to clean it. Sys Audit out of the box, I believe, is not cleaned at all. It's just going to be there. It's pretty interesting when you go look at it. It could be dawn of time. I was just looking at my instance, and I have records from 2015. Don't think I'm going to go back to them, but they're there. And Sys Audit Delete, as it builds up, I don't think there is a default cleaner on this one as well, but I'd have to go look. But this would definitely be one I'd want to have to go, hey, you can restore a record for 30 days. Like if you didn't know it was gone in 30 days, then we probably didn't need it. We've survived. I probably don't need to restore a record that was deleted from 6 years ago. And then Sys Audit Relation, there's some documentation. Like it's a bit weird on how you want to archive it, delete it, whatever goes on, because it's a child of the other two, ostensibly. Okay, so we answered that. If activities exceed the limit of 250, we'll remove random updates from the starting time. I don't think the activities are limited to 250 in the system. I think they are not. I think they are just displayed. If you have a record that has been updated a lot, viewing the calendar view is super messy and a lot of scrolling. So that's why I use the list view. I mean, it's personal preference, depends what you're doing. I use the list view because I am looking for a change to a specific field. Maybe I'm looking for what did other people, what did Adam do to this record? That happens. And the list lets me really focus in because I have my normal list, show matching, filter out, and searching. So if I'm looking for something, I'm generally not browsing what happened, but I'm looking for something that did happen. Oh, I should have started with this before as we come through. This is absolutely out of the box. There's nothing pro, there's nothing premium. Everybody has this. Auditing, I know, is enabled on many of our out of the box tables. We've thought about what's going on. You might want to review that to make sure it's up to what you're looking for. But auditing is there. The biggest thing I see is that somebody's not using ITIL. So that if you're not admin and you're not ITIL, you don't know that this exists at all, which is why we're doing this session. It does exist, and if it's something you need, then you want to open up access as appropriate. Okay, a couple of properties that are really important to know. Whether I want to audit variables, catalog variables, default's true. True probably makes sense to me, but maybe you'd turn it off for some reason. We have that. Auditing inserts. Somebody thought this was a good idea. We turn it off. You don't want to do that because the inserts are there. I might have to auditing and inserts. I guess a theoretical thing, but in practice, you just don't really need to do that. Those updates are important. That's the main crux of it. And then the deletes. The audit deleted tables. So like I said, most tables, when you turn on auditing, you get deletes. That's not the case for system tables. Let me get this right. Yes, the system tables do not have it audited, do not have deletes audited. We don't record them all, except for this list. So users, yes, we definitely audit when users get removed. We definitely audit when a group gets deleted. You want to restore that group. If that happens, you can, best intentions, something happens. Most of these things we mark as inactive. I don't delete users, I mark them inactive. Group, I might delete a group, and if I need to undelete it, that's there. So this is something that as you want to look at, it's there. Sys metadata records. This is all about data, auditing data, which are things that are not tracked in update sets, that are not, it's not extending Sys metadata. Those things you don't actually need to audit. I don't need to audit my business rules table. I don't need to audit my flows table because that's all kept in metadata, and I have all of those changes. And so all of this discussion doesn't have to do with that. This has to do with data and people, and something that more than developers are changing, right? I changed my location. I raised the priority of a task, all of those things. And last one we have here is ignore deletes. So if there are tables you just don't care about deletes, you can pull that out. By default, I don't change many of these. I don't change any of these. I just go in and I want auditing or I don't want. When you have large tables and you need to do some planning and you go look at what's in your audit, one of the things you might want to do, one of the things exercises we'll go through is if we're consuming a lot of space and Sys Audit is my biggest table, I'm going to go look at what am I auditing and are these things valuable? The one that gets me, maybe it's important. I'm not on the security team, but it gets me on Sys Audit, a Sys user. We're auditing the last login IP. And so it just changes a lot all the time. I just see all these records and there's a lot of noise that goes involved. So maybe you don't want to audit that field. Whether there's a table that you don't want to audit because it's that important or a field. Actually, we'll get to the fields now, I think. Let's go to the next slide. But let's go through some of these other things that come through. The audit tables don't have a lot of indexes. It might be something you might want to add an index on it if you're retrieving it. If you're not really retrieving it, it's not a problem, then leave it. But understand both Sys Audit and Sys Audit Delete were not designed for retrieval. We just want to write the data and we don't want to take up any extra space. So we want to minimize space and write it because retrieving a record restoring a deleted record is not something we should be doing regularly. It's very much an exception case. So we don't need to over optimize the system for that. We said, make sure you assess what's coming in. Are these things I actually need to audit? I generally, when I'm creating something new, I want to ask myself, do I need to audit this? But I ask myself that. I don't know about everybody who's ever done anything. So you definitely want to look at what are you deleting? What are you retaining? What are you auditing? Is this important at all? Could it possibly be important, or is it really never important and just burning a lot of space? And again, whether we're retaining the deleted records, whether we're not retaining the deleted records, or whether we're auditing the table or not. And the expired records, we can set up expiration and table cleaners to clean out some of this data. That's really important as we go through because most of us have some data retention policy in our organization about how much data we need to keep or how much we're allowed to keep, and different types of data. So I have some employee data that's coming through here and some other sensitive data. So it's important to look at what you're auditing and make sure that you're in compliance with your organization's policies. When we turn auditing on, it's great, but keeping all data for all time or keeping no data may be in conflict with your policies. So you'll want to configure the properties at the table level and on your system so that you're in compliance with your organization's policies. And I have two more slides that I'm going to go through and answer some more questions again. Okay, well, this one, the legal or regulatory point of view, be aware of what that is for your organization, and then we can configure Sys Audit to match that. Field level, we're going to get to the next one, but by default, I talked about how you turn on auditing for a table, and then everything is audited. But we do have controls at the field level as well. We have it in the documentation. I don't have it on here, but it's a link that you'll be able to see. We'll make sure we have that in there. If you search the documentation for auditing, enable auditing at the table level, you'll see a subpage about including and excluding at the field level. So if we talk about Sys user and it's logging my last IP I've logged in from, I can exclude that field. So it's just not audited. My security team might freak out and say, hey, you need to audit that. That's okay. You just have to decide which fields are important and which ones are not. Again, I normally just say, hey, if the table is important, they're all important. But particularly as you do some analysis on your Sys Audit table, you may see a certain field in a certain table is just changing back and forth for no reason, particularly if it's something like a last verified date or something like that, where a job goes through and says, yes, I checked it. Yes, I checked it. Well, do you really care? Is it material at all? No? Okay, let's exclude it so that we don't pollute the Sys Audit. There are space constraints at some point. Eventually we'll hit those. There are performance constraints as we're pulling up. At some point we might hit those. The audit's very much optimized to pull up a specific record. So if I'm looking at a specific record, I'm okay. But if it's truly worthless, it has no worth, then let's not audit it. Or again, if there's a table where most of the stuff is very transient and just moving all the time, but the two key fields, who owns it, needs to be audited, that field I need for regulatory purposes to know who is responsible. Then I can go in and turn auditing on just for that field, or I can turn auditing off for a few other fields. You have that control. But again, very important for you to understand what your organization's policies are and then configure the instance to match that, configure the system to match that. All right. And as I've been saying before, make sure you're auditing. Well, let's go. Audit the minimum you need. I need a lot. What do you need? Don't audit everything just because it's possible, but audit what you need to. I certainly think about the allow list and the deny list. About are there certain fields they come in? Some of that might have to be, hey, I'm going to default to auditing, but every 6 months we're going to take, or every quarter, every 6 months, every year, we're going to take a look at Sys Audit and understand what's going on. And that the Sys Audit relation and deleted can get really big if we're auditing all the time. So think about that, and then we'll look at table cleaners as well to say, hey, we're going to be pretty aggressive on what we keep in terms of deleted records, but we're going to purge them after 90 days. So it can never get too big. Things that we need to talk about. Okay, before we get to analytics, let's go through some of these questions. Okay, so activity logs and audit history. I believe they're actually coming from the same place. It's how it's exposed. So in my work notes, I generally see it in the work notes, you can have your activity, or you have your activity log on the side in the workspace. I'll have it as a field I can show onto a form if I'm using my old list of forms. It's a subset of what's an audit. So, I see that an incident, problem change a lot. Well, we already have those audited, so you can then choose and configure your activity log to say, I want to see when state changes. If something's really important that I want everybody to be able to see, then I'm going to show it in the activity log. At least give them the choice to see in the activity log. Some other things, day-to-day operations are not important. So I'll just leave that in the audit and it'll be there as well. But they're certainly all built together. They're not a parallel system. As far as I know. They're all related. I want to be very conservative on what I put in the activity log, because if you put too much information, then my fulfillers can't figure out what's important. So think about, this should be in the activity log, this should be in the audit. Again, if my users have ITIL, it's not a problem. If I configure that the role access so you can get to the audit if you need to, that's fine. Seeing when things change priority is probably important all the time. If I'm working on an incident, I want to be aware that this was just escalated to a P1, that this was just downgraded from a P2 to a P4. I want every fulfiller to see that, so I want to put it in the activity log and they see that there. If it is, maybe reassignment is in there, but when the assignment group changed, maybe I don't care. I only need to see that on an exception. Then I'll just leave it in the audit. And again, something like last activity date or something like that is very derived and very, very, very point in time. Maybe I won't audit that because it just kind of seems like needless noise in my audit. So there's a question about CMDB and the initial operation status of a CI at the time it was created. So we have the timeline. The timeline is one record at a time. So if I have auditing on for CMDB, which I should have, then you can view the timeline on one record at a time. If you are trying to do more than that, then we're going to talk about that in analytics in just a moment. And I believe there is a tool from CMDB to help look at that. The CMDB team is really, really good about exploiting what's in the audit. But I don't know more than the timeline, or if there's some CMDB tools about seeing how things evolved over time to come through. But again, we'll talk just a little bit about that in analytics. Performance implications. I believe these are asynchronous writes that come through. I don't think you're going to notice any audit, or when you turn on auditing on a table, I don't think you're going to notice a performance issue. It's more space is what I hear, is that if we're auditing something that's just changing all the time and writing and deleting records all the time, I probably don't want to audit that. There are some restraints that go against event management, but I think they're all space related, that you end up with all doubling up all your records, things that are important. Like auditing inserts, you would just end up with two records that say the same thing. So there's no point. But I am not, performance of the write is not something I take into account if I need to audit it. It will always be, if I need to audit it because I need to know what happened, I'm going to turn auditing on. Again, it's on most of our out of the box tables that are important, most of the task extensions. It's on by default. And so if there were any performance issues, we would have already resolved them. So it's not something I take into account.
Yeah, the factors to consider would just be the table size and the update frequency, as well as like the retention policy. And then what Adam mentioned about what fields you're actually wanting to audit on the table, just because of the size.
Yeah, yeah, that's so it's other factors other than performance. I'm not worried about it taking a performance hit, and then my inserts are going to take longer, right? My updates are going to take longer. Yeah, I don't think you'll notice. Um, and then as far as activity stream, we'll have to go look. I'm sure that's in the documentation about how do you configure the activity stream. I don't have that slide in here. Okay, but we will just mark it in here. We'll get that back. But again, if we search the documentation for activity stream configuration, I believe it's just when you're an admin, you just right click and you can configure what's shown by default. Okay, let's get into analytics. Some of the important stuff that's on here. First thing that comes through, process mining. If you've all seen process mining, it's based off of audits. It's based off of the system audit. So again, incident, problem change, the task stuff, we enable auditing by default from day one. So unless you turn it off, process mining is going to work to come through. Process mining is just pretty amazing if you haven't looked at what goes, what's in there. But I just want to connect. It's not something separate. It is using the audit to be able to do magic. It's just magic to understand where these flows are coming through, what's coming through. Ooh, my next slide. Okay, very related. Process mining's been tuned to pull the right data out and then do the analysis. Sys Audit is not directly reportable on purpose. Sys tables by default are not reportable. Anything that starts with Sys, there is a property where you can enable tables to be reportable, even though they start with Sys. Don't do it for Sys Audit. Sys Audit, again, it's one of the largest tables in your instance, or generally is, particularly as we get older and larger in your instance. Sys Audit is one table that keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You can have cleaners on it and all that stuff, but it's still big, and it is not optimized for reporting. It's absolutely not optimized for reporting. It's optimized to make sure we can write to it, and it minimizes the disk space. Sys Audit is an emergency. If you needed to report on it, the most common use case I get is I want to see a timeline. I want to be able to report on how long things were in a certain state. That's the most common one. How long something was useful, how long it takes to assign something, things like that. If you need those type of analytics about change, the thing you want to look at is this webinar that we did, this Academy session. It's a few years old, but it's still all correct about using metrics. So if you search our documentation for metrics, not assessment metrics, those are something different, but metrics, and it's specifically a duration metric, it tracks how long things were in certain states. You are able to put essentially a watcher on a field, and so it logs every time something changes, a field changes. So I do this often for assignment group, assignment person, state, things that change regularly. And I want to know how long it was in a certain state, how long things were in pending, and run analytics on that. This Academy session talks about configuring metrics and then running performance analytics indicators on top of that to really give you a lot of insight of what's going on. Process mining does a lot of that for the state changes and things to go on, and it's continuing to add more and more use cases. So if you're trying to run analytics on audit, take a look at what process mining does for you, because it probably does it out of box, and it is beautiful and efficient, and all that stuff just does it. The next level, you want to look at indicators on metrics, performance analytics and metrics, and you can build your own things from that. And there's also a few other things with SLA breakdowns and SLAs and reporting that are related to it as well. But you don't want to have reports on this. It's fine if an admin is going into the audit and looking for some data, that's fine. But operationally, you don't want to have reports on there. It's just going to end up causing performance issues throughout that. So we have tools, we have ways of doing it. If you have specific use cases, that we can come back and come through it. Okay. A question that came in about process mining. There are licensing. There are some licensing needs for process mining to come through. So if it's something you're interested in, it's again pretty amazing on what it can do. I'd certainly suggest that you talk to your account rep and get a demo and have a discussion with your impact team or your account rep. What can it do for you? What comes through? Because it's probably going to be very worth it for you. If it's not in your license, if it's in your license, you're already great. And there is a demo or some trial data that you can do. If you go look in the documentation, there are some things that you can run, I think, in your subprod or maybe even production. It's limited on what it can do, but you can get a taste for what it is. If you have use cases that you think the audit would be powering, again, talk to your solution consultant, talk to your impact team, have a discussion about it, and you might find another secret power. Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about auditing. It's a super exciting topic. I appreciate that we're all still here. But what do you need to do now? So a few things I want you to take away from this session. The first, review which tables are audited and the fields are audited. So if you haven't done it, I'm going to understand what I'm just saying, but go run some analysis, not a report necessarily, but go run some analysis about what's in Sys Audit. You probably need to do that production because most of the time when I see clones, we're not cloning down Sys Audit because it's a big table we have to look at. But do some analysis of what's being audited and what's not being audited. So I can very quickly go into Sys Dictionary, filter the type of collection, and see all my tables that are not audited. And particularly your custom tables that you've created, you want to make sure, hey, we should turn the audit on for this. That didn't happen. Don't wait until it's too late to turn it on, right? Don't wait until Lucy calls you and you don't have that record. Turn it on. It's very important for the custom. Out of the box, we think about that stuff and turn it on. It would be a little weird to me for you to turn on auditing on a table out of the box that we didn't ship on. Not impossible, because it depends on how you're using it. But we've put a lot of thought in what's audited and not audited. But those custom tables, I want you to really think about. And then fields, right? You might have added a custom field that's really polluting it, or how you're using something or not using it might have impacted it. So it's important for you to review what is audited and not audited. The next, retention data policy. I don't know which one's more important, one or two, but again, you're retaining data. So make sure that you put the audit or consider the audit in your data retention policies. Again, there are both sides of that. One, we're not allowed to keep data after this amount of time, or two, we have to keep it a certain amount of time. You have that really Goldilocks zone. And the same thing with fields. There might be certain fields that you can keep some information, but not other information. The audit is stored with a field at the field level. So if you needed to remove certain fields just an amount of time, that's theoretically possible. I think you can do that. And if anybody in the panel tells me that I'm wrong, then we can have that discussion to come through. But again, have that conversation about your data retention policy, looking at which fields are audited and not audited to make sure that you're compliant with your organization's policies. Restoration process. Lucy was able to get that file restored because we knew what to do. The reason we're doing this session is that you can think about what you want to do. Whether you have a KB article that says, here's what we want to do, so that when that frontline technician gets a call saying, I need to restore this, they don't go, I don't know what to do. Make sure you have a KB article on here's what our process is, what you can restore or not restore, why they may see it or not see it. Just think about those things and walk through it. There was a discussion as we were coming up with these topics about, could I create a service catalog item? I'm a bit torn because if you're deleting stuff that often, we have some other problems, but the records are there, right? I can see Lucy would be able to see the record she deleted in the last 30 days. If she had access to delete it, she should probably have access to restore it. I can't really think of why you'd have access to delete and not restore. And specifically, if I have access to create and delete and write, then I probably have access to restore. Should have access to do it. So maybe it's something I'm going to automate with a catalog item, but definitely have a process. Think about it. And my suggestion is you do run through it, just like any disaster recovery. Go through the process. If I'm deleting or if I'm creating a custom app, it's probably something I want to talk about with the developer. It's not always the first thing we think about, but it's something that I want to discuss, maybe delete, restore, and go, hey, everything looked good. Yeah, maybe it's something that's a great checkpoint to do, just like we would do for any disaster recovery. Let's think about that and how we're going to use audit and deleted records in that process. Okay. And with that, we're going to open up to questions. So I know we have one more that's in here, which got answered. Okay. So panelists.
Sorry, it was about who they could talk to in relation to like when they want to know like how much time a ticket was assigned to a particular assignment group. Those are like great questions, like reporting and analytic questions that can be tailored to our platform analytics academies. But you can also find, I'll also send you the link to like our metric base where when you want to find the duration of like it being assigned to a particular group, that's a great way to be able to also get that information.
Yeah, specifically for that one, for assignment groups, you want SLA breakdowns is the best answer for that, and you need to have SLAs configured, which you should and think about it. But SLA breakdowns are, I've yet to talk to an organization that didn't want them. They may not have known what they were called. But specifically because SLA breakdowns allow you to um, take into account business calendars. And so assignment groups and the hot potatoes, and I know we have an academy session on it to come through. If you search for SLA breakdowns and ServiceNow Academy, it'll come up. But we do have a dedicated academies onto that stuff. The indicator with metrics might talk about it as well. The one that we have there. I wanted to restore a record and show you how it worked to come through, since I think we still have a couple of minutes. Let's take a look. So we'll just do a couple things as we come in. So I bookmarked my favorite incident. So first of all, we're going to look at the history. How do you access that view? So let's do that. So I am looking at an incident because I have admin or ITIL. On this instance, it's default, so I need admin or ITIL. I can right click on the header and look at the history, and I have that calendar view. We'll pull that up real quick. And I see all the changes going back to 2016. If I deleted my audit after 2 years, I wouldn't see these changes. It would just start 2 years ago. That's okay, but just be aware, right? If you're deleting it, this comes from Sys Audit, and the reason it's such a big table is because I have lots of changes I want to have. So again, it depends on your policy. So this one actually hasn't changed since 2016. But I can see all the changes that came through. I can change the view a little bit more. And I'm again seeing this was the initial value because it was created, but then every change I'm seeing this is what it was and this is what it is now, the before and after of all these things. And in this case, I'm seeing it the day view. And I can come in, go back to the view here. Oops. I can go, I want to see all the changes in state. And now the state changes are going to be highlighted. So I know that these gray ones, the state didn't change, but David did change the state a couple times this day. So that is my calendar view. And it has that blowout, the before and after, which is really useful. The view I use more often is on my history is my list view. Same information, exact same information. We were talking about this before about the history things are not things you want to query out. This is coming out of Sys Audit, but one of the things you'll see is this table is Sys history set. You can't query this table. I mean, the data will be you can, but it'll be very inconsistent because this is only generated when I need to see it. That's why we see this load time. It's how long it took to take Sys Audit and pull it into Sys history. And then I believe the Sys history is kept for 30 days, but after 30 days, it'll just be regenerated when needed. Just pull up when needed. So that's there. I can, now that this is generated though, I can come in and say, oh, I want to see when the state changed. So now I can see sorted by update time and update number would be there. Notice the update number is a whole collection of changes that come through. Maybe might have changed state, might not. So it's perfectly understandable, expected that there's no 2 and 3 here. Even if they were audited, there might have been some other changes. But these things were changed together. If I go look at this now, I should see some of the, like 14, if I show matching 14, these 10 fields were all changed at the exact same time. They were changed all at the exact same time, so they're audited together. They have the audit numbers the same. But again, I'm not generally looking at this. The calendar view would show me that better. But what I am looking for, move a couple things out of the way, I can see, hey, what did Joe edit? What did Joe do here? And when did Joe change the state? That's what I'm looking for. So here I can see all of the time that Joe changed the state. If I'm doing an audit, this might be important. Okay, so we have that. Again, this is the view I normally use to come through very fast because it's all been pulled out of Sys Audit. If I were trying to get this out of Sys Audit and I was querying the same thing, my performance would not be this good. It'd all be there, I'd get the answer. But if you can do it at this level, that's the way we want to do. do it. And I want to look at deleted records. We're going to pull that up. And we wanted to test specifically, can I restore multiple at the same time? And I'll show, let's look at this real quick. So I don't even know what this table is. And these were all deleted. This is one where I do want to question, why am I deleting this? Or why am I auditing this? Because I have my deletes. I don't know, maybe I don't need to delete that, but we'll take a look. Okay, so let's see. All right, this is a demo instance that I don't do that much in, and I still have 8 million deleted records. So it would lead me to believe that I do not have a policy to delete these by default. That sounds like the last time I Z-booted this, so I think there's not a policy to delete these. Otherwise, it is a very weird policy because that would be 26 months, I think. But let's take a look. So if I were looking at, I wanted to restore some, we're going to restore these, some discovery admin credentials. This is probably a bad idea because I don't know what these are. I mean, they're security stuff, and I'm just going to restore them. But let's see if I select a multiple of these. Ooh, I know what I did. I did a show matching, and so it's crunching these 8 million. So again, you got to be careful on what you do and filter in. We had note in there that if you are doing some of these things, we'll wait. If you are doing some of these things, you might want to add an index. I don't think there's one out of the box, or you'd want to look at it because this is not something common we're going to do or fulfillers are going to do, but you can do it. So, oops. Cancel that transaction. Let's go back to the filters only. I can display it all and it's fast enough. So let's say I want to do a bulk restore. So I'm going to check these 3. So I can undelete records en masse through the list view. So whether I'm viewing 50 at a time or 100 at a time, you could do that. I'm sure you could write a script that would do it as well. But again, this isn't something we should be doing very often. But if there was it is disaster recovery. So if you want to test it and have a script that you could do it, that's something you could do. I haven't had to do that. So I can come in here and I can undelete these. That should be relatively quick. Yep. So they've been undeleted. It's going to do some weird things because I undeleted ACLs. It's same thing with a module that comes in. If I'm undeleting a specific record, I can just go into that record. And this is what it's going to restore. So it captured everything when it was deleted, and it's going to restore it. This is not pulling from Sys Audit. This takes a snapshot of what that record looks like when you deleted it, and I can undelete record, and then it will be restored as well. Okay, so we'll stop that. Okay, and other questions. So I think we talked about how we got to that view. Again, at the beginning, we talked about the roles. So you need ITIL or admin by default, but you could create a role and you could you create a role and give that to who you need to. If you don't want to give it, like I don't think I would give it the SNC internal, but certainly if I need some more people to view it, I could create a role and give them access to it. It is not controlled table by table. It is, you can view the history or you can't view the history. You can view it or you cannot. So understand that's global, but I think that's okay. Again, you still have to have access to view the record and view the fields and all of that stuff. The deleted records you don't want to give access to because that does have that full snapshot that's coming in. I might show people that they can see that this record existed who deleted it, but the payload, I definitely would not, I'd want to reserve for admin. And I think that's okay. Last one, you can turn on and off audit, turn on audit retroactively. No, just to be clear, if it was not on, those were not audited. There might be in some log somewhere, but we're not getting them back. So it's important for custom apps, new tables. Think about, do I want to turn auditing on? It is easy to turn it off. If you didn't turn it on, then you're not going to get it. So it is very underlooked when I talk to people about custom apps, about what about auditing. So it is something you want to put into your process. Should this be audited? What should be audited? Just like we're going to do a security check, just like we're going to do everything else to come through. I might put up a instant scan check-in or to check my update sets to say, if you're creating a table that extends task. If you don't have auditing on, we have I want to make sure that you're clear. A task table without auditing is weird to me. Not impossible, but weird. CMDB is probably the same thing. Other tables, that's hard to tell. Other tables are hit and miss. Sys user, I definitely want auditing on Sys user. Maybe not all the fields, but the majority. If I were doing something like that, but task without audit is a bit of a red flag, and I want somebody to confirm, yeah, we definitely don't care who touches these things. And then going back to the activity log, you don't have to show this to everybody because we have the activity log. Just make sure you configure that in an appropriate manner on the key fields. All right.
Okay. There was one person that had raised their hand to ask a question. Jeffrey, I don't know if you're still on. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. I know we're at the top of the hour.
And
Okay.
as it comes up, there was a comment in the chat that somebody who does know how to restore records just had to delete one from 8 years ago. It's not impossible. I'm not sure that it's mission critical if nobody noticed it was gone for 8 years, but it's nice if you have it, you can restore it. But again, policy would trump over that about how much data I'm allowed to keep or required to keep.
Okay.
Oh,
I don't go ahead.
we still had a couple more slides. We had your slide that I didn't get to,
Yeah,
right?
I could quickly say it if we want to. Yeah, so we're seeking valuable feedback from our platform owners and admins on how you're using the ServiceNow platform and its applications. If you go to this QR code or this URL, by completing this form, you or your team may be invited to participate in a one-on-one customer feedback session. These sessions are designed to gather insights, and that will help us enhance the platform to better meet your needs and more specifically, the enablement that we create. Your insights are crucial to helping us improve ServiceNow and strengthen our platform foundations enablement. So we really appreciate your time and contribution. If you're interested, please sign up. It's only 60 minutes long. We're flexible. Based on your availability, we'll schedule that session. And the types of questions that we tailor towards could be anything related to upgrades, subscription management, service catalog, other foundational applications for our platform owner. And the form only takes about 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes to fill out. Thank you.
And that's super key. Putting that stuff in there really helps us out to figure out how to make the product better. What sessions should we do like this that help you out as well? So we would love to hear from you so that we can help you better. All right. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up.
Thank you for joining.
Yes, and a question just came in. Sorry, as we go through, and I'll just keep talking. You can hang up. A question came in about if you disable workflow, it does disable audit. I believe that is something we're working on. I don't know how you would well, you probably could directly insert into audit, but it wouldn't be beneficial. Or it'd be problematic. It'd be pretty risky. I believe this is something we are working on, and we'll definitely talk to our inbound product management team about what the best solution is. But I don't know off the top of my head how you get some things to audit if you're disabling workflows. But disabling workflows disables business rules. It does disable auditing. So it is something I generally don't do anymore, unless I'm okay with not auditing. Disabling workflow in the normal course of business is something that we'd want to talk about why we have to do that, and is there something else we can do? Is there some better logic we can have with flows? As we focus more on flows and all of that stuff that goes on in the optimization, it may be something we need to take out of business rules or workflows and move into flows. But I can't answer that. If you want to follow up with your account team or impact team, they might be able to get that answer. But you can ask that. You can tell them we talked about it here, and then we can get you a better answer than that. All right, it's great to see everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for spending an hour with us.
Thank you, everybody.